we can move on to the next speaker. So our next speaker is Dr. Dirk Mueller-Wieland. Dr. Mueller-Wieland is an endocrinologist and professor of medicine at the University of Aachen in Germany, with a special interest in diabetes, lipids, and cardiovascular diseases. He is also the head of the Clinical Trial Center in the Department of Cardiology. His main focus is in digital transformation of e-healthcare delivery and monitoring of diseases and patient pathways. Today, Dr. Mueller-Wieland's talk will shed light on the precision monitoring and the approach to policy implementation.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, dear Chair, it's a pleasure for me today to talk to you about precision monitoring, a part which is often in the background when we talk about precision medicine, and especially focus a little bit on the approach to policy implementation. And when I thought about this talk before, really boring you a little bit with all the different details in health technology assessments and approaches for biosensors, medical products, and digital healthcare solutions, I would like to pave the way today a little bit to really outline that the beginning also from the science and the view of medical associations is that we understand ourselves that also from the science and medical associations, it's our common responsibility to understand that we also have to get into contact with policymakers, with stakeholders in healthcare to help and to foster that not only new drugs, but also new devices and sensors reaches the patient. Because best science and best medical science is nothing if it doesn't really reach the patient who need it. So this is why I show you this slide. Policies, if you like it or not, sets a course to a large extent in diabetology and future patient care. And today I would like to make 3 issues, or let me say 3 points and claims, which is first, diabetes monitoring. If you want to convince and address public and policymakers, diabetes monitoring is more than just glucose monitoring. Monitoring has to prove its added value in care as being part of an integrated healthcare solution. And furthermore, policy implementation with all their hustles should be understood not as a hurdle only, but policy implementation also guarantees and ensures standards in quality of devices as well as care. So let me begin with the glucose monitoring. And as you know, and it's basically also this very, very interesting Congress is following up about this very, very, very valuable position statement from the ADA and EASD. And I thank very much John Nolan for inviting me, and of course the president of the ADA, Robert Eggle, for all this initiative about precision medicine and diabetes. This was the first consensus report from this ADA and European group. And they very nicely outline many things, but again, pinpointing that precision medicine is also precision prognostics, which I think has huge implications as we learn that a lot of new diabetes treatment strategies rather focus on improvement of prognosis and protection of our organs. But the point I would like to make is that it not only depends on the data to develop new predictive algorithms and patient-centered prognosis algorithms, but good data need in the structure and in the continuous effort very, very good monitoring. And if you see in this picture, good monitoring is not only dependent on glucose, but also in the prediction of other complications or comorbidities in diabetes. And in this respect, I think we also have to focus on the patients with diabetes as a global group. And I think this very recent publication in Lancet, which shows you the trends in predominant causes of death. So why and what are the reasons as patients with diabetes are dying, from England, where they looked at the data in patients with and without diabetes, I think is very, very interesting. And I would like to show you one data slide of it, because again, it makes clear that diabetes is more than glucose control. And also, by the way, it's more than cardiovascular risk. So what is shown in the slide shows you the death rate on the left-hand side in people with diabetes 2001, and people then going to the right, and people with diabetes at the year 2018. On the right-hand side, you see the people without diabetes 2001 and 2018. So just focus perhaps in people with diabetes 2018 compared with people without diabetes 2018. And it's just the point to make: the death rate is going down. However, the death rate in patients with diabetes is still almost twofold in patients with diabetes compared to patients with people without diabetes. So now, but if you look now on the reasons or related causes for death, then the blue color shows you ischemic heart disease. And now I would like to focus on the years 2001 and 2018 in patients with diabetes. So the two left bars. And the first thing, which is very obvious, is that the cause for ischemic related death is going down. So this is not only surprising, but this is a very, very huge success in diabetic medicine. But the relative increase indicates new problems. So what you can see, there's a huge reason for death is cancer and diabetes-related cancer deaths. It's green, it's dementia and neurological degenerative diseases. And in ink, basically it's respiratory and other diseases. So we have to look at the whole patient. We have to look at all organ systems and death reasons. So monitoring, again, is more than glucose. And this is also added and reflected that we learn more about potential different subgroups in this very heterogeneous patient groups of patients with type 2 diabetes. And this milestone paper from Alquist's group just shows you, again, more or less 5 different subgroups, and basically identified by going, by approaching the risk for specific complications like CKD, so it's chronic kidney disease, or macroalbuminuria, which is a proteinuria, then end-stage renal disease, retinopathy, or cardiovascular risk. And if you take a cluster of different clinical parameters, you can delineate about 5 different subgroups, which having different risks to different organ complications. So making again this issue, if we can identify these patients early, not only as a diagnosis, but also to see who is responding well or low by monitoring to different interventions or in the clinical course, it's a would be a major advantage. And of course now, if you say, well, it's more than glucose control, there is a huge developing field of monitoring different parameters, which on the left-hand side are somehow related in gray to these 5 different subgroups, or to avert and known comorbidities like nephropathy, polyneuropathy, retinopathy, or coronary heart disease, and especially heart failure, an emerging comorbidity which has great impact on the prognosis of patients with diabetes. And just one example I would like to make again about monitoring, especially in patients with chronic heart failure disease. We know that we are coming very frequently, very late, and I will allude to it in a minute. So taking together the first point, integration of all data, not only glucose, in the management of complex and multifactorial disease with multiple comorbidities, for patient-oriented problem solving and better prognosis. So this is the approach, and this is what we also have to communicate to policymakers and stakeholders. Furthermore, monitoring now, the second part, should be a part of an integrated healthcare solution. So if you accept point one, of course, monitoring also has to show its added value in a healthcare solution. And I just want to go into simple examples. One of them is that as the German Diabetes Association, and when I was president, we initiated the electronic health record for diabetes patients in Germany, a very complex care system in Germany. And it just outlines in brief and is in common with many other electronic health records, probably you know from your own countries. But the issue is basically to gather and to collect all the real clinical data into a common data pool in a structure and a format which is readable, evaluable, and is exchangeable with other data banks. So these clinical data are supposed to go immediately, of course, if the patient agrees to it, into a diabetes registry. So hoping that we will have very soon a collection of data which is in time also to do then evaluations not only of the quality of care, not only to pave the path to improve research and development, but it also will help us, of course, to evaluate the added benefit of different variables or monitoring strategies, etc. So it's a generating data pool. It's, of course, you can add guideline informations to, in case there are changes in the monitoring systems, alert systems, and of course, AI-based recommendations. It is in cooperation, of course, for the e-health record system and the registry. And just one example I want to pick out for monitoring is the progression of heart failure. What we know from heart failure in patients with and without diabetes, of course, is myocardial function goes down over time, but we always react to acute events. And once there's an event, you improve by adoption of medication, then the patient gets worse, and again, you react and you react. So we are always coming a little bit too late. And the idea, of course, is if you have a very early and continuous monitoring, that you might be able to change the fate of these patients by early monitoring, early medication adoption, individualized care, that you can improve prognosis. And this is where we are working in a European consortium to develop an avatar, which we call Dr. Me. It's an Interreg funding. The project is called Passion HF and is the leading of Brunella Orca from Maastricht, where we try to develop an avatar, not only getting a lot of informations and then, of course, getting algorithms for personalized programs and advice, but especially because of the data analysis that we can then reach guideline-based adaptation of the medication. So the patient gets into self-care, also considering their adaptation of medication beside glucose towards other medication, in this case, guideline-based heart failure medication. And this might reduce disparities in care and improve outcome, as we hope and what we have to show in a long-term clinical outcome trial. So taking again monitoring as part of integrated healthcare solution should be really also in the focus in all precision medicine. And the electronic health records, if they are understood as a platform and an entry to data banks, of course, they have to be interoperable and they have to be built on international standardized data structure and safety. Then we have a vision for global ER and database. And the vision is, of course, that we can exchange databases around Europe or globally. So again, if we have different developments in the monitoring, then the question is, about policy implementation for quality and not as a hurdle. Again, we have to develop not only ideas for monitoring, we have to prove, of course, in good clinical medicine, that they have an added value. And if you look at the different policy implementations, there is, of course, a general scene, which was also in this very nice paper about precision medicine, and there is a regulatory engagement. The issue is that mostly an added value, which frames, of course, the market access and the financing in the different healthcare systems in Europe and other countries of the world. It's different or slightly different in each country. So that makes it very difficult, but there are common schemes, and I've just put them together just as an overview and to see where we have to go together. Is I think the best known is the drugs. Of course, in drugs, as you know, if you have a new drug and you assume that it improves outcome, you have to prove it in clinical trials. Then you get the approval from the FDA or EMA for efficacy and safety of this drug. However, if you need and want to have reimbursement in healthcare systems, then we have this health technology assessment, or called HTA. And this process is different in each country, at least at the moment, even also in Europe. There are two issues of the HTA. The HTA is asking not for efficacy and not for safety as an approval criteria. They really want to know the added value to a comparator. That makes the field difficult. And this is also the issue of discussion when new drugs coming on the market. And the added value then gives the frame for the pricing discussion between the pharmaceutical industry and the health care insurances. So now if you look at the devices, it's just in general, we have the evaluation, it's completely different, and you get the CE certificate for safety and function. And then you do somehow a pricing. And then you know it's very difficult and very different for the devices in each country, how you get potential reimbursement or partial reimbursement. And then, of course, we have this very impressive development market of digital health applications. Also, they need the evaluation, they see, and similar pricing. However, if you go now and want reimbursement, which is the lower line, at least in Germany, there's a lot of discussion. In Europe, there's a lot of discussion. There are some differences between countries in Europe. However, digital health applications as part of integrated healthcare solutions, yes, they need also an evaluation for CE. But after the CE, which is a European CE, you have again health technology assessments. There's a lot of discussion. There's a lot of dispute about it. However, if it's a digital health implying medical care and implying added benefit and claiming reimbursement from the health insurances, somehow also their controlled clinical trials or RCTs are, at least in Germany now, are asked for to be presented for reimbursement. This has a lot of pros, this has a lot of contrasts, but this will also frame not only the reimbursement, but again, the pricing. What we wish a little bit is, of course, that the science base and evaluation criteria for the HTA assessments would have a common European criteria catalog. And then the bargaining would be on the national level. But even this is at the moment on the stage. And John Nolan is very active in Europe about it. I think also MedTech Europe is very active about it. And also the ASD is in some way in the discussion. But I think we have to approach the stakeholders, we have to approach the politicians, parliaments, commissions, but we also have to respect our responsibility. And clearly, this is to show this precise role in the healthcare solution and the added value. Policies paving global visions for quality standards, implementing evidence-based HTA criteria for efficacy, safety, and then there are regional estimations of added benefits. So at the end, I would like to make the point again, we have the responsibility also as scientists and clinicians and medical associations to approach stakeholders, to position papers, to address policymakers, because we have the responsibility to support everything that good science reaches the patient, and the quality and impact of monitoring also needs to show the added value. So e-diabetology, and part of it is monitoring, is from my point of view a key for patient-centered solutions. It's novel approaches we need in research, HTA assessments, and evaluations of their role also have to be part of e-health care strategies, because if you want to improve medicine, only really good innovations and good quality data will help the patient. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Mueller-Wieland. I think that was a very, very important talk. And I know I have many questions for you, but due to the interest of time, I think we'll move on to the next speaker and save those questions for the plenary discussion.